Hello everyone. Today I'm going to do a presentation on scientific tone and writing in scientific language. So let's get started. Okay, so most of you should be familiar with creative writing, tone, right? We've all had lots of English classes, where we have written stories, where there's a setting and, we have to have a powerful introduction, very catchy, right? So creative writing is completely different than scientific tone. Quite the opposite, in fact. Scientific tone uses clear and concise wording. Not that creative writing isn't clear, but there's a lot of fluff stuff that goes into creative writing. We want to make sure it's flowy and elegant. In scientific tone, we just want to say what we want to say and be done with it, right? We don't want to confuse the reader along the way, make them read it numerous times in order to understand the information. Scientific tone, we want to write informatively. We want to try and use statistics to support the problem. We want to write an active voice. Okay, active voice is past tense, and it's subject, verb, object. Okay, and we'll go over some of this stuff a little bit later on. You use sources and citations, and in the next 2 weeks you'll be receiving APA tutorial on APA style in-text citations and APA style references. So just be thinking about when you're writing some of these scientific tone factors. Keep in mind. Okay, so rule number 1 is practice makes perfect, as with anything, right? This just means don't get discouraged. Okay, so a lot of people think that they are bad writers, and it's not, nobody's perfect. Practice makes perfect. And it does take, a lot of time. Scientific writing takes a lot of editing, okay, 3, 4, 5 times around, have somebody else look at it, that sort of thing. So don't get discouraged if it's not, right on the first try. Rule number 2 is editing is absolutely crucial. Okay, so timing is key. Remember, try not to procrastinate. Style is key, scientific tone. Grammar and cutting. So cutting meaning meaning don't be attached to your words. Okay, so be ready to edit with a heavy hand, essentially. And rule number 3 is to write logically. Okay, sequentially. Make sure it goes in order. Okay, the reader shouldn't be confused as they're following through your proposal. Some hidden rules, write when you're inspired. Don't try and sit down and write with writer's block. It never works. You just get frustrated, and at the end of the day, it's just easier to walk away and then come back later. Write when you have something to say. Okay, don't wait until the last minute, meaning don't procrastinate. Try not to write while intoxicated unless you have procrastinated long enough and, it's due the next day and maybe you need a little liquid inspiration, who knows, but I don't recommend it. Write how you write and then edit to make it right. Read plenty of journals. Okay, the more you read, the greater the probability of emulating what you're reading. A lot of times, if you have writer's block or you don't quite know how to say something, go back to your journals and see how they have said it, and then try and paraphrase it and emulate it. You'll find that the higher caliber articles you read, the better writer you become. Imitate good writing, right? So I kind of just went over that. Never become too attached to your words, meaning, cut if you can. And then don't go off on tangents, okay? And this one's important. This is why we took so long to make a nice, clear question, okay, or hypothesis, because this will help keep you focused. If you ever get lost when you're writing, go back to your question and ask yourself, what am I trying to prove? What am I trying to say? Where am I trying to go with my research? And then you'll be able to, get back on track, get back on focus, use those APA levels of heading for organization. So ask yourself, what am I trying to say? And then ask yourself after you've read it, have you said it? Okay, a lot of times you'll find that what is in your head doesn't translate to the paper. And so that's why editing is crucial, absolutely crucial in anything and everything that you do. You want to go through and you want to edit it. Read it out loud. Okay, have somebody else read it. That's the best. If you can have somebody else look at it and be like, listen, I really don't know what you're trying to say, or wow, that was awesome. I totally got it. Okay. Some other tips of the trade of becoming a good writer is to be conscientious when you write. Remember that conscientious word. When I was little, my teachers always used to send me home with that on my report card that said, student is not conscientious or something like that. And I'm sitting here thinking, you're sending this big, huge word to like a third grader. Okay, so be conscientious, be meticulous, pay attention to detail. Use strong, punchy, active verbs, but don't say pretentious. So strong words, right? Has to have some oomph to it, but don't be pretentious in that nobody's going to understand what you're saying. Be specific. Don't turn verbs into nouns. There's nothing that nouns hate more than being turned into verbs. Backwards. There's nothing that verbs hate more than being turned into nouns. Use proper grammar. Okay, make sure your subjects and verbs agree. Subject-verb agreement, let's see, tense agreement. If your first sentence is in the past, then the entire paragraph needs to be in the past tense. Same thing within that sentence, okay? Don't say, something in a verb in the past and then at the end of that talk in the present in the same sentence. Again, make sure you're using the active voice, okay? Subject, verb, object. Subject does this, okay? Bookmark a thesaurus. I use Word often, but sometimes the synonyms, in Microsoft Word, but sometimes even those get overused. So make sure you have a thesaurus bookmark online. Always speak in the positive, okay? Don't ever use the negatives, right? So if you see the word not in there, see if you can make that positive sounding. Never use universal words such as all, none, nothing, never, or always. Okay, and then edit. Remove all unnecessary words, phrases, fluff, junk, jazz, etc. You get the picture. So say what you're going to say. Get rid of all of that crap in there. A lot of sentences will need cleaning up, okay, because our brain is has a lot going on, okay, and when we write things out, we want to sound intelligent. And so we put a lot of unnecessary words in there, especially in scientific writing. You don't need all those adjectives, okay, or adverbs. For example, such preparations shall be made as will completely obscure all federal buildings and non-federal buildings occupied by the federal government during an air raid for any period of time from visibility by reason of internal or external illumination. So what does this even mean? I have absolutely no idea what's happening here. So FDR's response was tell them that in the buildings where they have to keep the work going to put something across the windows. So it was probably a very easy question that they, could have just said in, one measly little sentence instead of that huge paragraph. How about this one? These findings imply that the rates of absorbic radical production and its recycling via dihydroasorbate reductase to replenish the ascorbate pool are equivalent at the lower irradiance, but not equivalent at higher irradiance, with the rate of ascorbate radical production exceeding its recycling back to ascorbate. If I have to say that word one more time, I'm just gonna give up on life. Okay, so edited sounds much better. These findings imply that at low irradiation, ascorbic radicals are produced and recycled at the same rate, but at high irradiation, ascorbate radicals are produced faster than they can be recycled back to ascorbate. Straightforward, to the point, all the junk's gone, and we have this beautiful sentence. And I'm just going to skip. Okay, here's some examples of fluff. Very, really, quite, basically, generally, lots of adverbs here. We don't need them. Okay, just say the verb. In the event that, in the nature of, it has been estimated that, it seems that, the point I'm trying to make, what I mean to say is, or it may be argued that. Okay, all of that can be condensed probably to one punchy verb. Fluff, fluff, fluff. Here's some more fluff. Okay, if you have time to go back and read them all. Here's some clunky phrases. A majority of can be translated to most. So just simply say most. A number of can be translated to many. Are of the same opinion, meaning, we agree. Okay. So if you say numerous studies are of the same opinion, all you would need to say is numerous studies agree that. By means of could just be by, and then less frequently occurring would be rare. Here's some more if you guys have time to read the clunky phrases, but I'm going to skip through them. So during editing, you want to ask yourself, can I eliminate unnecessary and repetitive words? Can I replace a phrase with one word, which is what we just did? Okay, all three of the would be the three, few in number, just fewer. Give rise to, if something gives rise to something else, it would mean cause, right? Cause and effect. Are your pronouns easily determined, especially the word it? Try not to use the word it, okay, because a lot of times you have to go back and, the reader has to go back and figure out what you're talking about, like who the subject is, who or what the subject is. And then are you using scientific jargon? Okay, be vigilant and be ruthless in your editing. Fight the seduction of word attachment, meaning edit, edit, edit. Don't become attached to your words. Cut, cut, cut. Okay, some examples of punchy verbs. Here's an example. Brain injury incident shows 2 peak periods in almost all reports. Rates are the highest in young people and the elderly. But with more punch, it reads, brain injury incidence peaks in the young and the elderly. So we're, again, straight to the point. We've used the punch verb peaks, okay, instead of up here where you can see shows 2 peak periods. Okay, so we've replaced the kind of blah, verb shows to something with a little bit more spunk or peaks. And we've trimmed the sentence down a lot. Also, be specific. Okay, don't be vague, especially in scientific writing. You really want to be honest and ethical when you're reporting. The more vague you are, the less likely people, trust you, essentially. So just come out and say it. Be specific. Prefer the specific to the general, the definite to the vague, the concrete to the abstract. Okay, this one I really like. Some words and phrases are blobs. They just they just lay there and they just sit there and do nothing. Okay. So vague would be something like a period of unfavorable weather set in. More specific would be it rained every day for a week. Okay, just come right out and say it. Vague, he showed satisfaction as he took possession of his well-earned reward. That would be an example of a creative writing sentence, right? Or say it as he grinned as he pocketed the coin. Okay. Be specific. Don't make the reader guess. Say what you need to say and then move on. Don't upset verbs by turning them into nouns. Remember, verbs hate this. Obtain estimates of. Just simply say estimate or estimate. Has seen an expansion in. How about just has expanded? Provides a methodologic emphasis. How about just emphasizes methodology? Or take an assessment of, assess. And you'll notice that we've got, 2 verbs together. Okay, so we've changed our verb estimate into a noun because we have a verb in front of it. Obtain estimates. Just say the researcher estimated instead of the researcher obtained estimates of. Okay. Passive voice, again, try and avoid that at all costs. It reads much better in the active voice. In passive voice sentences, the subject is acted upon. The subject doesn't do the acting in passive voice. We want the subject to do the acting. Okay? We want, sorry. I wasn't reading that actually when I just said that, but it looks like I know what's on my slide. Anyway, an example is she is loved. Well, who on earth is loving her? Okay, so you would say, he loves her. Okay, he is the subject, love is the verb, her is the object. Okay. Avoid universal negatives. Use of the words never, all, always, and every implies everyone and every time, and we all know that especially in the scientific world, and in any world, essentially, nobody ever does the same thing the same way twice. And, there is an exception though, right? So if you include a modifier in the sentence, for example, your sample population gave you 100% of something, then of course you would say always. Or if your sample population gave you 0% of something, you would say never. And that would probably be the only time that I can think of when you can use a universal negative. Instead, use most, sometimes, often, and occasionally. Again, try and use positives and not negatives. So just change your negative words here, not honest, to just dishonest. Okay, you can see here that we're also taking a phrase, right, and condensing it into one word. So we're kind of killing two birds with one stone here. Moving into common writing mistakes, grammar, effect versus effect. Okay, effect. The verb to influence versus the noun, the influence. Okay, so affect, if you're going to use affect, it will be used as a verb. It's, to influence something, the cause of something. Effect will be used as a noun, or the result of the influence. That versus which, that when you're using the word that, okay, it is essential to the sentence. It is what's considered an essential clause, meaning if you remove it, the sentence changes altogether. For example, stroke incidence data are obtained from sources which use the ICD classification systems. We're trying to determine if we should use the word that or the word which here, right? So if that is essential to the meaning of the sentence, conversely, which is considered a non-essential clause, it's descriptive and it's always preceded by a comma. So we're trying to determine what the sentence is saying, which one we should use. So my initial guess is stroke incidence data are obtained from sources. Okay, well, where do these sources come from? They come from the use of the ICD, Code of Diseases classification system. That is important. And removing this will change the entire meaning of the sentence. So I'm going to go ahead and take a guess here and say that this is wrong and I should be using the word that instead of which. And I didn't give the answer, but I'm 100% sure here. So it should read, stroke incidence data are obtained from sources that use the ICD classification systems. It sounds much better though too, doesn't it? Right, because a comma makes us pause. Okay. IE versus EG. IE means that is, and EG means for example. So when you are writing, think to yourself, ask yourself, okay, am I writing a for example phrase? If I am, I want to put EG. And if I'm trying to explain something by giving an analogy or a further explanation, I probably want to use IE. Okay, so the most common way of explaining ideas in papers is to give examples. So most of the time you will use EG instead of IE. And a lot of people get this confused. And I don't know if it was taught wrong or people just don't see EG that often. They see IE more often. Whom versus whom. This one's pretty easy. When you reread the sentence aloud and substitute the pronoun, so he or she would be who, and him or her is whom. So who is going to the party? right? He or she is going to the party, so who is correct here? He is going to the party, so I would substitute he for who. The party is for him, so now I can substitute whom in here if I wanted to ask, the question, the party is for whom. Okay, so if you don't know, substitute he or she for who, see if it makes sense, and him or her from whom, for whom. So, for example, this one would be him is going to the party. Well, that we know that doesn't sound appropriate, right? That doesn't sound right at all. So our next guess would be he is going to the party, and now we know we can use the word who here. Singular versus plural tenses. Keep singular and plural tenses throughout the paper. Especially in the sentence. I like to always write in the plural if I can, because you'll find that more often than not, if you say, the participant turned in their surveys. For some reason, we really like to mix and match our tenses here, singular and plural tenses. But if you always write plurally, for example, the participants turned in their surveys, then that's correct. Okay, because a lot of times we don't like to say the participant turned in his or her survey. Okay, because sometimes we don't know the gender, and so it's just easier to write in the plural because there really is no gender for there. We assume mixed, I guess. Most of the time it's easier. Okay, so I already went over that. Eliminate misplaced modifiers. Again, use the active voice. When you use the active voice, you always have the subject first, the verb second, the object last, and that helps to figure out, who is doing the action and who is receiving the action. Okay, so using this procedure, the investigator tested the participants, right? Investigator is the subject, tested is the verb, and object is the participants. Whereas in this sentence, which is incorrect, it says the investigator tested the participants using the procedure. So here we don't know, it isn't clear whether the investigator or the students used the procedure in question. Okay, so using the active voice, writing in the active voice helps to kind of eliminate confusion. Elements in a series must be parallel, meaning, well, you can see, let's do an example. The participants were told to make themselves comfortable, to read the instructions, and to ask about anything they did not understand. Okay, so don't go switching gears mid-sentence, right? You want to keep it very linear. If you use the present tense, make sure the entire sentence is in the present tense. Same thing with the past tense. But things have to match. Okay, don't go going off on tangents over here where we say the participants were told to make themselves comfortable, to read the instructions, and that they should ask about anything they did not understand. Okay, it just gets all messy at the end. In science, we try and avoid the messy. Okay, we really like to stay logical and flowy. Overusage of quotations. Okay, writing papers is to, test your knowledge and your ability to analyze and synthesize information. And when you're constantly quoting others, you're not learning. My advice would be to, quote initially. And then when you go back in the editing phase, by the time you finish the paper, you're going to be more knowledgeable about your topic and your subject. Your peers, if you're working in groups or if you have somebody edit it for you, will, point out an overusage of quotations. And so you'll be able to go back and paraphrase that. When you're more knowledgeable, when you're just starting out writing the paper, you're like, oh, that's an awesome quote. I don't really know much about it. It's hard for me to paraphrase. But then towards the end, you should kind of be almost an expert a little bit, right? This paper is going to be about 15 to 20 pages, and that takes a lot of work. So minimal quotes in your papers. Also, you want the quotes that you choose to use, you want them to be powerful. You really, really do. Don't put a quote in there that really is kind of like, well, it doesn't really add much, okay? Because now you're just wasting quotes, right? Disorganization. You guys learned about APA levels of heading. This helps to eliminate disorganization. The reader is able to flow nicely through your paper and know every single time that you change topics, especially with those level 1 and level 2 headers. When the reader reads that, they're like, oh, that is exactly what's in this section, and it's really easy to follow. Not to mention, when you're editing, you can easily change entire sections of the paper and move them around instead of having to move around, each sentence. You just highlight an entire section and move it either up sooner or later or combine it with another one. I really find APA levels of heading very, very useful. And also, when I was a student, I'm a student now, but my educators really loved it, because they automatically know if you answer a question that was given to you, and it's easy for them to follow also. Hint, hint. Use commas sparingly. I had like 5 pages of how to use commas on here, and I just deleted them all and just said, use commas sparingly. So in this sentence, we can clearly eliminate 3/4 of these, right? Tonight is with great pleasure that I introduce the man of the hour, Mr. Bob Blah Blah, character in the funniest TV show ever made, Arrested Development. I should have put Buster Bluth in there because he is actually my favorite. I don't know if you guys watch Arrested Development, but I highly recommend it. In any case, every time you use a comma, remember that the reader is in their head pausing. If you don't want to pause, don't put a comma. Okay? Sometimes you need a comma. For example, when you use the word which is always preceded by a comma, or a comma always precedes the word which. Incorrect use of prove. Remember that peer-reviewed literature doesn't prove, it provides supporting evidence. Okay? Every single study is flawed. In some way, shape, or form can be done better. We know that a lot of times there are conflicting results. And the methodologies aren't perfect. Okay, so every study has limitations, and if it's a good study, then the author will provide some of those limitations that they found in their study. But just know that the sources that you have aren't proving. Okay, it's not theory. They're just providing evidence to give to the profession. Okay, some writing humor. Let's see if I can go through some of these. Some of these are kind of funny. Okay, so here's a couple. If you don't edit, sometimes you'll come out, reading these things. How about, don't let worry kill you off, let the church help. So basically they're just saying, let the church kill you off. Okay, somebody didn't edit this very well. Scouts are saving aluminum cans, bottles, and other items to be recycled. Proceeds will be used to cripple children. So we don't want that. That's not something we really want to support, right? Please place your donation in the envelope along with the deceased person you want remembered. No. Let's see. The pastor would appreciate it if the ladies of the congregation would lend him their electric girdles for the pancake breakfast next Sunday. So I think we want this to say griddles, but it, was missed. Okay. This one I like. The Low Self-Esteem Support Group will meet Thursday at 7 p.m. Please use the back door. No. And then here's some examples, if you guys want to go through them, about how to edit sentences. In any case, I really hope that this tutorial was helpful, and I will post the PowerPoint so you can go back and look at it without having to listen to me. And then, of course, this will be posted on YouTube. If you have any questions, as always, let me know. And don't, practice makes perfect again. So kind of just use these tips. Cut, okay? And edit. And I'm sure everybody will, turn in a great draft to me. Remember when I do drafts, when I edit drafts, I'll edit probably the first half and then give you some ideas and pointers. I'm editing for grammar, APA, maybe some content just to help you out a little bit. I am actually not editing specifically for content. If you have content questions, you should address them to your instructor, your educator. But I will try my best. So, if I don't understand something, I'll say, oh, you should probably expand on this or do that. I know a little bit about, because I've been helping out with this class for, I think this is like my 6th semester now. 6th, I want to say. So in any case, I will try my best and help you guys out, and don't be discouraged. You'll all do great. Okay, have a good night.